I'd like to welcome you guys to this week's report. We've got a 3-day weekend ahead of us with 4th of July holiday on Monday, and lots of good fishing options. Bad news is, as many times this last year, we have weather to deal with this weekend. It's going to be windy up at the Channel Islands. Nick, SBI, Clemente, all going to be pretty windy. So just be aware of that if you're planning on a trip out on your own boat. Looks okay. Catalina closer in, the tuna grounds, those areas look okay, but definitely keep an eye on the wind before heading out. But let's head out to the map now. As I mentioned, we've got some wind up at the Channel Islands, but there was some pretty good fishing up there earlier this week. And, you know, it might be fishable in some areas. I don't know, depending on how the wind forecast is. But they're having some really good sea bass fishing at times. Up at Santa Rosa, also west end of Santa Cruz. Some boats getting on them really good, having easy limits. Other boats struggling, just getting a few and some halibut in the mix. But might be too windy to get to those areas this week. But they were really getting some nice scores up there on some nice sized sea bass. Good bass fishing at Santa Cruz. My friend Scott Summersgill was over there. Actually, he was at Nacapa and Santa Cruz, I think. But he had some nice calico bass. There's also some barracuda biting at the islands. And in on the beach, they're also getting barracuda along with some good sand bass fishing, some nice calicos in there as well. If you're heading up that way and you live up that way, you know, you might want to stay on the beach this weekend because it looks pretty calm. At least along the beach. Once you get up to the islands, it's a different story. You might be able to fish Anacapa. I'm not sure. You'll have to check the weather as we get closer to it. Heading down the line, I'm not even going to talk about Nick or SBI or even Clemente this week because of the weather had it is going to make it unfishable basically. But and Clemente's been closed for most of the week due to naval activity, so I don't really have much to report on it anyway. So I'm going to head into Catalina Island. The island's biting pretty well. They're catching sea bass, yellows, barracuda bass, bonita, everything at the island. Not as many sea bass as they were catching, but the Pacific Current has live squid at the island, so if you're going to go fish for those, you probably want to stop and get some squid. Yellows are biting on the front side and the back. Bass and barracuda are mostly on the front, and the bass are biting around the island. My buddy Jimmy was over there on Sunday, and he said it was real easy fishing and a lot of action on bass. Heading into the beach, the bite around the Long Beach and Huntington Beach is really dried up. I don't know what happened there. Maybe there's a false alarm on a sand bass spawn, but as of today's Wednesday, it's been slow, and still some bass to be caught. You know, private boaters have no trouble catching sand bass and calicos on the Isers, Horseshoe, Huntington Beach, wrecks and reefs, stuff like that. PB still biting. I haven't heard of anybody really knocking them dead up there lately, but you know, water's fine up there. I went up on Wednesday. It was really windy. It was after those thunderstorms we had in the morning, and we caught a few bass, but it was post-frontal, and the water was dirty, and it was extremely windy, so that made it for a little slower fishing. Bass biting in the Santa Monica Bay as well. I'm sure you guys saw they had a 174-pound bluefin caught by a guy fishing for sea bass in the Santa Monica Bay on a dropper loop. I don't know that you need to start bringing your popper gear out there, but there are fish like that around. Lost, that is. Heading down the beach, Jimmy had a charter, I think on Wednesday last week. Went 1 for 2 on nice sea bass below Newport Harbor. I know the boats down there out of Dana Point are getting the sporadic sea bass, so if you're down that way, I'd keep an eye out for those. Heading further down the beach to San Diego, the bass bites kind of rebounded. It's slowed up a little bit, but they're biting pretty good right now. And probably have a fun day if you want to just go throw the weedless around at La Jolla Kelp or what's open of it, or Point Loma. Heading out to the Coronado Islands, due to the slow tuna fishing, the sport boat fleet from San Diego is kind of, the full day boats anyway, they've kind of gone back to the islands. And they had some good scores on Yellowtail early in the week. And then those kind of dried up, and they ended up getting some nice sea bass on Tuesday, I think it was. The San Diego had a dozen fish or so, and I know Season Sport Fishing was out there. They got some fish too. So good action there at the islands. There's a lot of fish around. The yellows weren't really biting, but yesterday, but that doesn't mean they're not going to bite tomorrow. But as I said, in the tuna grounds, it's kind of slowed up. There's still some fish being caught in Mexican waters. The majority of the boats have slid up to U.S. waters, or let me take that back. The boats that were fishing tuna in Mexican waters have started to target more on kelp patties, which are further down the line that have yellows, and there was a Dorado caught this week, and they're still seeing some bluefin down there, but they're not very cooperative. Boats in U.S. waters have been catching a few fish, but it's a lot of show and not a lot of go. So that's about it for the map. I'm going to talk about a trip I took to tuna fishing on Sunday. Anyway, I went fishing on my friend Jonathan's boat. He's got a 31-foot Cabo Express. We launched out of Huntington Harbor Sunday morning around 6:30, and we ran out towards the area they've been biting out, outside the 181 ridge, 181, 182 ridge, out to the 43. Found a lot of tuna out there. At the time, there was a hard break of warmer water, and the fish were on the colder side of the break. And once you got on the other side, even though the water looked great, there were no fish. Sounds like that's broken down a bit since then, but a lot of times these fish will align on these hard edges, be it color or water temperature, not always on the good looking or warmer side. So that's something to keep in mind. If you find fish your own and you hit a temperature break or a color change and they don't seem where side's life, will just dry up like nothing, then I would go back to the other side of the break. Anyway, these bluefin were about as picky and touchy as I've seen them. I won't say ever, but pretty close to it. Tons of fish out there, but they're all really hauling ass, and they were running kind of like west-northwest along the Clemente Ridge. But, you'd see spots of breaking fish, but they weren't foamers per se. I would call them feeding breezers, where there'd be a length of fish, and they would pop up for a second in several small areas when they would encounter these bait balls, and the bait was all tiny. It was rice. So they'd only be up for a few seconds. We went 2 for 3, and I would say in the entire day we only got maybe 12 casts that were good casts on fish, even though we were around fish all day long. And when I say good casts, the only chance we had on a bite was getting a popper into a small area where the fish had bait pushed up tight. And, the area could be 3 feet across, could be 8 feet across. We never saw any real big foam. Well, we saw one nicer foam. We hooked 2 over a fish on that, but it was gone quickly too. But you had to be really pinpoint accurate on your cast to get bit in these things, and you had to get your lure through the fish feeding on the surface to get bit. There's been other boats that have been just slaying them on certain days, but it sounds like overall it's more of that kind of action where it's precise stuff. And one of the observations I had made was that these fish, since they're moving, they're not looking for bait. They're moving and encountering bait and feeding sporadically. So you could stay with these fish for a long time. If you saw spots came up and they slid out from under you, you could just kind of follow them slowly and pace them. You can get an idea of what speed they're going. And you could see them shining ahead of you in the swell and stuff like that. So you could be in a position when those fish come up again and you have that 30-second or 1-minute casting window to get that lure right in front of those things. If you're a half mile away, quarter mile away, you're not going to get there in time to get those fish to bite. So hopefully they get out of that mode, but if you find yourself in that mode, it's best to jog along with those fish. Maybe watch what they're doing. One of the times don't cast. Just stay at the wheel, drive with them and see, pace them. How fast are they going? Are they going 1 or 2 knots? Kick the boat in another gear. Just keep sliding in the direction they're sliding so you can be there ready when they come up to feed again. And the birds are a really big indicator. So the birds would all be high flying and they would come down right before it starts. So if you're keeping an eye on the birds and the pacing the fish, you got a better chance of being there when those fish pop up, of getting your lure in there if you're throwing a lure. Again, it was one was a little Yozuri hydro popper, and the other was on a clear choice ghost popper. But something new that guys are doing a lot now. This is my first time. I got to back up here. There was a ton of boat pressure out there on Sunday, and there was really no way to avoid it. I'm very boat pressure adverse, but no matter where you drove away, other boats would get on you once they saw you stopping casting. And I don't blame them. They're trying to catch fish too. But one of the things that guys are doing now is they're trolling these Mad Max, which I can understand is a good way to catch fish. If you guys don't know, it's like a high-speed trolling plug, kind of like a Marauder, made by Nomad Tackle. And while these things work, in fact, I only saw 2 other fish hooked all day. One was on my friend Mitch's boat he was running, and another was a guy trolling a Mad Max. But the mistake that these guys trolling the Mad Mac are making, it's pretty frustrating to the guys not trolling them, is that they will wait until boats get on the spot and start casting, and then they will troll right through those birds at 12 or 15 knots or whatever they're trolling. And yeah, it's rude as hell. And obviously not very productive considering the guys weren't getting bit that I saw doing it all day long. If I were to go out and troll one of those lures, which I'm not someone that's going to do, I would look for an area with birds that are flying high but concentrated, because those birds are looking at fish that are down deep. I don't think that those fish, when they're feeding on the surface and you drive right through them with your boat, are going to be too excited about eating your lure. I think you're going to spook them. That's what these guys are doing a lot. So rather than go to where the guys are casting on fish or where the birds are tight to the water, I would look for those high flying birds that are tracking fish around. Those birds up high are doing the same thing I'm doing on my boat and following these fish and seeing where they're going. So get out into a zone that looks fishy, watch what the birds are doing, watch what the other boats are doing, and then try and find an area where you've got higher birds without the boats, and then troll that lure through there. And one of the tips, if you guys aren't trolling these things a lot, you got to troll them way back. You don't want them to prop wash like you would a tuna jig normally. So drop it way back. You want to run it in clean water. Same with the spreader bar. Don't drive through where the guys are casting their poppers and stuff like that. You're just going to piss everybody off and not catch anything. So I would, anybody that's trolling, I would say look for those higher birds, because they're showing fish that are not feeding on the surface, but they're also not so deep that the birds can't see them. So those fish could be 20 feet down, and I'm not going to be able to get them to come up and bite my popper, but you drag that madback through there, probably got a pretty good shot. And rather than just driving in a straight line for 20 miles or zigzagging randomly all over the place, once you find an area of deeper birds, it's a breeze that's feeding, I would just try zigzagging through there, or maybe make a loop through, try and drag your lure through it, then loop around and come in at another angle and stuff like that. Just do that, and as opposed to just driving around following other boats like a lot of these guys do. So that's about it. We're going to have to deal with some boat traffic this weekend. I'm sorry to say that, but happy 4th of July, everyone, and good luck if you're fishing.